so many emotions, basically. Some of them were the relief of like, wow, we don't have to deal with the school being mad at us. This sucks because you just got happy. Your wife is now, we're traumatized. You're not a dad. I feel like I let my guard down for you or like trusted you. And then I feel like this now. Oh, did I do something wrong? Did I cause God to, well, you're dangling a carrot in front of my face and then going, or you didn't do anything right, so I'm not going to give you this treat. Or what, like that's, because I love my dog. That's how I think. Like, I'm like, oh, you didn't do what I said, so you don't get the reward.
The Courageous Conversations Conference is so important because where else can we have these types of conversations with these types of thought leaders about these types of topics?
It is a unique and a rare opportunity to come and hear voices that have been trained in diverse places, coming together to ask these kind of critical questions in humility, in love, in conviction, and in courage.
If you're on the fence in a broader sense about any questions you have to do with the faith, this is the right place.
This is modeling for us. How do we live in a world in which there's a lot of different perspectives and a lot of different points of view, even in the church? And how do I navigate that and not have to compromise what I believe?
But that is exactly why all of us need to be attending the Courageous Conversations Conference, because in a world full of crucifixion, somebody needs to start having the conversation.
Where else can you come and get both perspectives from predominantly Black and brown leaders, thinkers, scholars, preachers, pastors? There's nowhere else you can go. You need to be here at the Courageous Conversations, Jude 3.
Well, thank you for watching another episode of the Jude 3 Project podcast. As always, I'm your host, Lisa Fields, the founder of the Jude 3 Project, and we're continuing our series on When Faith Disappoints, the gap between what we believe and what we experience. As you know, this is my book that I wrote, and I don't know if you're seeing this before it's officially available and you've pre-ordered it, or you are watching this after August 13th, but either way, make sure you get this wherever books are sold. And as we're continuing to talk about the book, When Faith Disappoints, and the themes in the book, we brought in someone who's no stranger to the Jude 3 Project, who pretty much, for the most part, manages and creates most of our video content. Lance Asper. So if you've been at Courageous, you've seen Lance running around getting interviews, testimonials. Yeah, so this is the man. People are always asking, how does y'all content look so good? It's Lance and along with Scott. So appreciate you, Lance, for being here.
Oh, thank you.
This is your first time. Well, you said this is not your first time in front of the camera, but
majority of it is.
Yeah, most of the time you're behind the camera.
Most of the time editing all the interviews.
Yeah. And I love doing this because I get to interview people that I actually know about their stories and get a little bit deeper into their stories. So Lance, tell us a little bit about who you are.
Well, my name is Lance Asper. I do video production here in Jacksonville. I moved to Jacksonville, Florida back in 2014 and to work at a church here locally, and I just do video production. And my wife now currently runs a homeschool co-op. So both trying to run our own businesses. It's been an adventure.
Tell us a little bit about how you came to faith.
I'd say I grew up in it. My parents, strong believers. I was born in the North. We moved down here to Texas, or we moved to Texas where we were raised. I was always in church. I'm one of those that I don't remember a time ever not being in church because my parents were believers, so they had us in Royal Rangers. Like, we grew up doing all the like Christian Boy Scout stuff. So I grew up pretty much doing all that, and then grew up in Texas at another church, got plugged in pretty early. Basically, the church was so young that they didn't know what to do with the 6th grade group of kids once they graduated the like elementary. So they basically said, let's just have them like work for us. And so they put us like, oh, okay, well, if your parents are already coming here on a Sunday, we might as well have you volunteer. So I got plugged into like doing like children's ministry stuff. Mm-hmm. So that's basically, and so all my life I just remembered ever just going to church.
Yeah. No, that's awesome. So as you became an adult and your faith became your own, when is the time that you felt like, man, this is not what I expected it to be?
moving out of state, coming here, working at another church, being on my own was like a big wake up. Like, hey, you know, you have to, you're dealing with everything now. So dealing with different people, different personalities, being responsible for my own like living. And so then basically when I moved here, 6 months after I moved here, the people I moved here with left and went back to Texas. So that was the first like, oh wait, I thought I was called here, but the people that said they were here with me are now gone. So that was like the first, and that was the first year, the first half. Thankfully, I'd met my wife before that, and we were like kind of started dating. So when they were like, hey, come back to Texas and just believe in faith that God will provide a job for you here, I was like, that's really hard to do. And I just met this like girl. So I'm going to stay here in Florida because I'll play this out for a while and see where this goes. And so that worked out. But then, yeah, the church I was at went through a lot of stuff. They actually went through a revival state, which I on my end, I was very happy about it because I was like, wow, this is what I grew up in. Like heavy believing, like spirit flowing services, like healing ministries, like very Old Testament type of like, this is the Bible, we believe it, and the Acts Church, like this is what we're doing. And I was like very happy about that. And I was like, well, this is a good turn. There's hope. My wife was getting a degree in teaching. She wanted to be a math teacher. I was very concerned that if we wanted to start a family, that'd be really hard for us to both have 2 jobs and then be like, not that I wanted to be a stay-at-home mom, but she wanted to like have energy to stay home with a child. And I'm like, hey, I see what's going on through just your internship in college, your internship, and then the first 3 years of her like teaching were rough. And I don't think it was what she was expecting. She loves teaching, but I don't think the school environment was what she was expecting. And so I was like, look, the church I'm at has free childcare for staff. So, you know, why don't, you know, sacrificially, you know, end the career that you've been going to school for like 4 or 5 years doing and join me on staff if there's a job opening, which I think the church was very family based. So they were kind of like, yeah, like let's get Meredith in, let's get her helping along. So she basically ended her career as a teacher. And then within like 3 months of that, they let me go. And they were like, we feel like you don't want to be here. So that was rough because I feel like that was like that was the end of COVID, or end of 2020. And I was one of the main staff members when it came to like the creative department that was like, COVID sucks, but what you're preaching is important. I'm going to help you. So I want to come out and like capture the content when others might be like, you know, let's just see where this goes, or like, oh, it's COVID lockdowns. We're not going anywhere. But I was like, let's go. Let's keep filming your message. Like I'm ready. I want to keep doing this. So I kind of felt betrayed there that I got let go saying, we don't feel like you want to be here. 3 months after my wife like ended her career to like join staff with me to help start a family, leaving that my wife was still there though. They were just like, are you okay with this? And in our heads, we're like, well, kind of have to. Like, you have a job. Like, let's just keep it this way. They're like, do you want to step off? And we're like, no, please don't. Like, she needs her job. And that was hard for her too. To have this church go, oh, we support your family, we support you, but your husband is, I don't think it didn't work, but we want you still here. And she's kind of like wrestling with that. And I don't want to like speak on what she was experiencing with it, but it was kind of like, I'm hearing what you're saying, church, that you're family and this and that, but you just kind of really threw a wrench into our like family dynamic. I still work with you but you apparently weren't accepting my husband in these situations. So thankfully she got a job offer to basically step out of that job and become a co-op, like a homeschool co-op teacher tutor. And she took that job, and we basically said, okay, Lord, we don't know if this is the right move, but we feel like the opportunity was presented. It technically put her back into teaching, being with kids, what she likes to do. And feels called to like helping and loves doing it. So I was like, hey, maybe this is just an open door. Let's take it. But it was really new to my wife, to jump out of like a type of like small business. She usually either government paid by the school or the church. So that was a small business for her to jump onto. And we were very wary of it. And 2 weeks later, we kind of found out that everyone that was working on that project that she was still a part of the church got like let go. The whole like department crashed. So we were like, okay, that was the right call. Like, wow, we're hearing the Lord. This was the right call. We did the right thing. We stepped out in faith and he provided. That was like January. So when it comes to school semesters, January to like May, we were like, this is cool. Let's see what happens. And basically at the end of like May, they came back and they're like, actually the class you're teaching is either graduating. It was a high school class. They're like, well, the class you're teaching is graduating. I don't think we're going to do this grade anymore. So actually we don't need you next semester. And we were like, cool. So like all the weight of like the bills like hit me. And I was like, that's great. We didn't initially go, oh God, why did that happen? Because we were very thankful that that season was there. So when they came back and said, hey, that semester is done, we didn't get mad at God for that. And I think the Lord kind of blessed us in that, because basically by the next semester, they came back and they were like, hey, we're actually looking for someone to take over the second location that we've had. It's just really hard. We need help with it. Do y'all want to take it? And then when we were first starting, we were like, why don't we have one? So when we saw that they were offering us a school, like basically to take on for ourselves, we said, hey, this would be cool because, you know, as the owner of the school, Meredith doesn't have to be teaching. Like, oh, so maybe it'll be easier if we owned a school and we had a family. Like, maybe let's try this. We took all that on. We said yes, and then we were like, okay, this is within like 5 to 6 years of us being married, and that's when we said we wanted to start having a family. And her parents kind of knew that, so they never were pressuring us to have kids, but her mom kind of was like, so kids, when? I mean, we're like, okay. So we've had friends who've had a hard time getting pregnant, so let's just start. Let's just try. Just because we don't know if we're gonna have, you never know. It's a hard topic. And so we go, okay, we have these two jobs. Obviously, like this school isn't, not that it's not gonna be there because anything can happen, but we're basically like, I've got my business, she's got hers. We're like, okay, we're a little stable. We pretty much have to start now. Like basically everyone's saying, you're never ready for kids. This isn't. So we just said, I don't know what's going to happen next. Everything seems to be up and down. So we're just like, let's start. 2022, we got pregnant and we were so excited. We're so happy. I got a little nervous because 9 months after, basically I started counting the months of when she'd be giving birth, and it would have been like August, basically, like either the end of July or right at the middle, like the start of August, of us owning a school. And I got very afraid because I was like, oh my goodness. So I remember having fear, and it's important to the story because I remember having fear that, yes, I'm excited to be a dad, but I think I'm more afraid of trying to start a family while my wife just took on a huge responsibility. And now we're, not only is it, we're about to have a kid, but we're responsible for like 60 families, basically 60 kids. And we all these thoughts of like, wow, when we announce this, is the school going to be mad at us? Are they going to just go, what's going to happen when you give birth? Like, so I felt pressure from like that. And since it was in the beginning of November, we didn't wait till our first like ultrasound to like announce, because we were about literally going to go see her family. So we were just so excited that we told her parents, we told all of her like extended family when we saw them over Thanksgiving. And then we get back and you learn things. So apparently you don't have your first like doctor OB visit for like 12 weeks, or at least that's what we were told. So, hey, you're pregnant. Good job. Come see us in 12 weeks. We're like, okay, sweet. And Meredith noticed some light bleeding, and we kind of got concerned. We're like, hey, is this normal? And they were telling us, no, this is like, hey, first child is fine. It'll be okay. Let us know if it's like heavy. Like if it's like, obviously this shouldn't be happening, but like some bleeding is okay. And we're like, okay. I'm getting nervous. I'm like, okay. A little time passed and it didn't like kind of stop. So we were always getting nervous. And I think I remember being on the couch, and I think Meredith was using the restroom, and then she kind of came out scared, and we were like, what's going on? And she's like, I don't want to get like super gross in detail, but basically she's like, I don't know what just happened, but something that was not normal. And I was like, okay, so do we need to call the OB? Like, this is like leading up to like week 8. So I'm like, I can't wait another month. Like, there's 2 months of this. Like, no, with knowing that there was some bleeding, in the back of my head was like, there's a chance, like, chill, like, yeah, this might not be good. And I think that's what I was like processing the whole time, and like going, Lance, don't get your hopes up. Like, this doesn't seem right. I was like nervous the whole time. So she tells me that happened. We do tell the OB, and they call us and they say, yeah, come like next week. Let's get you in here just to do maybe an early check just to make sure everything's okay. So, I mean, I got excited to like, okay, finally we can go see a doctor about this, or go see the child, our first child. And I don't think, because we were having the bleeding from the start, it made me nervous the whole like those 2 months, to where I don't think I was feeling excited, because again, I was nervous that the parents were going to be mad at us. I was nervous of my wife going through like labor, having a baby, starting the school, like all these things were like hitting me. Then this hit, and I'm like, wow, this could go wrong, and this could be bad. And the day before we went to the doctors, that was my thought. It's like, hey, you're not, like, this isn't going to be good. Like, that's what I was afraid of. And the night before, like later that night, I was setting the coffee to prep for, when we need to wake up, get some coffee, go to the visit. And this is what's confused me, is I felt like the Lord was saying, no, it's like, it's okay to be happy that you're about to be a father. And I sat there and I was like, that's peace. Like, wow, like this, no, everything's going to be okay. Like, I'm feeling peace about this. Like, tomorrow's going to be just great. And they're going to scan her, and they're going to go, here's the child. Like, your child's there. I think everything's good. And I went, okay, I want to feel excited. Like, I'm actually excited. And there was a small voice that said, don't be excited. Like, you should, like, I don't know how to explain it. It was kind of like, you're not allowed to feel. I mean, I guess I'm not that emotional type of guy. So it was weird. It was a battle of like, be happy, be proud. You're about to be a father. This could be really good. I want you to go, like, basically I was like, oh, if we see the child, I want to remember that, hey, when we saw you first, I was happy and like proud to like going into this. I didn't want to really be like, oh, I was really nervous that you weren't going to be there. So my head went everywhere, and I was like, it's going to be okay. I have peace. We're going in tomorrow. This will be great. I'm going to be a dad. This is how I'm going to like really, really think about it. And so we woke up. It was the first thing in the morning. So then we drive over to the doctor, and because it was still early, they couldn't really do the full ultrasound, the scan on her stomach. So they were trying to like, I'm not trying to be super detailed, and it's obviously a really hard conversation. I know a lot of people have gone through this. Basically, the lady who was like scanning her was like, so yeah, how early are y'all coming in? And we're like, uh-oh. She's like, no, it's fine. Because, they can't tell us anything. They're not the doctor. They're just like checking everything out. And she's like, no, it just might be so early. It's fine. And so then they take us back to the room, and I'm sitting there going like, did you think that was a good, was that a good interaction, or is that a nervous or a bad one? And she's like, I don't know. So then the doctor came in, basically sat down and said, hey, so yeah, why are y'all here so early? Or like, tell us again what's going on. And she explained like, well, we were bleeding, and then, this happened the other day. And then she like looked at us and was like, yep. So that's what happened. That was a miscarriage. She tried to comfort us, basically saying, hey, she tried to comfort it in a way where it was like, it's not y'all's fault. Like, obviously you can get pregnant, you can get her pregnant. Like, she was trying to say, like, you know, she basically said, yeah, it's common. Sometimes babies don't make it the first trimester. I had so many emotions, basically. Some of them were the relief of like, wow, we don't have to deal with the school being mad at us. And then the floods of, okay, this sucks, because you just got happy that you were going to be a dad. You just got told you're not going to be a dad. Your wife is now, we're traumatized. You're not a dad. And it didn't really hit us like there. I had an appointment I had to go to right after that. And I was like, hey, I gotta go. Like, I'm sorry, like, not, hey, I gotta go, like, this is too much for me. I just said, hey, like, this isn't what we were expecting, but like, I have to go hit this appointment. And I think Meredith went straight to her mom's house and like talked to her. And I was like, we are gonna have to process this later, which looking back sucks, but I was driving to that appointment, and it's with a guy I've known for like years. It's 10 years. And I like showed up, and he's like, you're early. And I was like, what do you mean? He's like, yeah, your appointment's not until like 4 tonight. And I was like, the other thought was like, oh gosh, I just left my wife after we just found out she had a miscarriage. And I was crying in the car going there. I basically broke down to him, and thankfully it was just us and like in his business. And I was like, I've never cried before, and I've never really cried like that before. I've never had that much like hurt that I've experienced. And the questioning I was having was, God, was, what was that last night? Because you basically told me you're fine. Like, this is going to be okay. And that you're going to be a father. And I'm sitting there going, why did you let me feel this? Because I felt like I've had my guard up for so long that you were like speaking to me and like really giving me that peace. And then I feel like I let my guard down for you, or like trusted you. And then I feel like this now, like what was going on? And it was like, oh, did I do something wrong? Did I cause God to, you're dangling a carrot in front of my face and then going, or you didn't do anything right, so I'm not going to give you this treat, or what? Like, that's because I love my dog. That's how I think. Like, I'm like, oh, you didn't do what I said, so you don't get the reward. So I'm thinking, all these thoughts are like, this hurts. You let me feel this. I'm not a father now. And out of all the things we've been going through, why this? And it's a hard conversation. It's a hard conversation because we didn't really know. We don't really have friends who've gone through it that we knew until I think I had to fly out a couple weeks later, and some of those people knew that I was going to go fly out and do a shoot with. They knew we were expecting, and then I had to tell them. And I'm like, it didn't work. And then they shared with us, like, oh, you know, we went through one of those. And I'm like, I didn't know that. And then, you know, met someone else there, and they were like, oh yeah, like, when some people were a little farther down in the pregnancy, and I'm like, I can't imagine. So when you've been talking about this, I'm sitting here thinking, when I've gone to all your conferences and done all your content, and I'm like, wow, okay. I was like, wow, I don't have that much trauma or anything that I've like really just blamed God on. But then when it came to thinking about it, I was like, this is one where I questioned everything. Like, why did I feel this way? Because growing up in the church, and then even doing your content, you have all the professors, pastors, experts, and I'm like eating all of the information up. I'm like, I love all this. And then it's kind of listening to their podcast too, though. Some of them always talk about their struggles, so it's good to hear that, like, wow, the experts have struggles, and I'm allowed to struggle with things too, and know that I don't have to be like perfect, which I feel like the pressure's on me to try to be perfect when I'm not. So that's kind of that time was hard.
When you think about that time, how were you thinking about God, you think, before you and Meredith lost the baby? How do you think you thought about God?
I coming out of that revival season from that church I was in, and then doing some like theology, like classes there too while I was there. I thought God was all powerful, strong, and he can do anything, and he's real, and people sometimes are misunderstand or don't, they see God in a different way. And I'm sitting there going like, well, I see God as this, like, I see his power, I see him being real. And then going into where something happened to me, where it was like, wait a minute, like, wait, I thought I was supporting you, God. I thought I was helping ministries do content, working at churches. I was like, I thought I was helping you. And then this happened to us. So
How do you think you see God now?
I mean, hindsight's 2020, and so now we do have a son. I do have a son, Will, and so he was born November, like right around Thanksgiving. So it gave us a break of, Meredith to go through some postpartum, all that type of stuff. We had a break. I had to think, okay, you were saying everything was gonna be okay. Like you were saying, you're gonna be a father, and like everything I feel now when I see my son's like smile is how I felt that night, which is. It's weird because, you don't know until you have, I guess, a son. So I'm over here going, why am I feeling this like joy? And then now every time I see Will's face, I'm just like, that's how I felt the night before. I still question, why did you make us go through that? But that piece is kind of back now. So I don't know what that is, but I'm just like that. I've never felt like that before that night. And that's why I was mad, because I was like, I just had peace and I was happy. And now I have my son and he's smiling. And I'm like, okay, healthy baby boy, we're good. Now, which it's a hard conversation because we've talked to a lot of people who they still can't. And it's very hard. And I don't want to like make light of it. And I know some people they've shared their stories of the success stories, but then the people still hurt. And so I don't want to ever make it sound like that's how it happens for everybody. But we are very happy and blessed to have this now, and just praying that continues. Mm-hmm. The provision.
Yeah, I love how you just process through that, because you're saying like the suffering is there, but the joy has outweighed the suffering. And I think sometimes we think that suffering lasts the whole time. I remember I talk about in the book that I remember my therapist when I was venting to her, and she was like, we get stuck on the cross, but we forget there's a resurrection. Yeah. And so God not only wants us to see, he wants us to have joy in the next life. And there's so many great things to come about, going to heaven, but he wants to actually fulfill some promises on earth. Not all things. I mean, there's several things I prayed for God to do that I haven't seen manifested on earth, but that would make earth heaven, right? If we had no suffering, then earth would be heaven. And so the reason we long for a life to come is because of the pains of this life. What would you tell younger Lance about God?
I would tell younger Lance, growing up in the church, despite pastors or people being human, that, God does what he says he's going to do, and he'll provide. I think I can look back now at everything, every roadblock or every situation I was in, and seeing coming out of the other side of it, and saying that like even in a hard situation like that one, that there's still joy coming at the end of that.
No, I love that. Thank you for taking the time to share your story and how it connected really with trusting God to protect you, God to provide for you, and trusting his power over your life, which are all different chapters in the book and themes that you hit on. And if you're wrestling like Lance and I have wrestled, I encourage you to grab When Faith Disappoints, The Gap Between What We Believe and What We Experience. You can get it wherever books are sold. Thank you for tuning in to another episode of the Jude 3 Project podcast. You can catch all of our past episodes at jude3project.org. You can subscribe to our podcast wherever you stream your favorite podcast, watch on YouTube. You can help support Jude 3 Project by giving at jude3project.com. jude3project.org, hitting that donate tab. And remember, here at the Jude 3 Project, we're helping you know what you believe and why you believe it. Until next time, grace and peace, and God bless. Many of you know about my faith crisis I had when I was an undergrad student at the University of North Florida, but many of you don't know about the wrestle I had when I was a seminary student. I had heard about kids being murdered by terrorists in the Middle East. It struck me. I was grappling with that thing, and we were learning about the problem of evil in class, but it just didn't emotionally satisfy me, if I'm honest. I could explain the problem theologically, philosophically, logically, but emotionally, it just didn't hit. And I was wrestling with the Lord. So I went to my New Testament professor and I said, "Hey, Dr. Purser, I'm wrestling with this." And he said, "Me too." That was the answer I needed, to know somebody that has spent all this time in school, has walked with the Lord this many years, could still wrestle with his faith, and it was okay. He normalized the struggle for me. In my debut book, When Faith Disappoints, I want to give you what Dr. Purser gave me, the understanding that it's okay to wrestle. In this book, When Faith Disappoints, the gap between what we believe and what we experience, we explore the pain points that cause people to wrestle with faith. Personhood. Who am I? Power. You've given God control of your life, but you don't like the direction he's steered you. Protection. Why didn't God protect you as a child, as an adult? In so many cases, you feel unprotected. Provision. We know scripture says that God will supply all of our needs, but sometimes you feel like you still don't have what you need. Purpose. Why am I on this earth? Pleasure. It seems like you're sacrificing so much as a Christian and the return doesn't meet what you hoped it would. You don't have joy. You don't have happiness. And the one that has gripped us so much post-COVID, peace. Anxiety seems to be more of a companion to you than peace. I know the wrestle, and many of you are in the gap between what you believe and what you experience. And I hope this book will be a balm to help bridge that gap, because many of you are struggling with disappointment. In the midst of disappointment, I hope these words will provide hope. Grab When Faith Disappoints. Available now wherever books are sold.